Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I'm Guto, and with me, as always, we have Steve Carroll and Matt Barocco. Evening, boys.
Evening.
Well, let's get straight into it because it's been a while since we've recorded. We've got a lot of games to look back on. We've got an entire transfer deadline day to look back on, which was very eventful. And we've got two matches coming up this week to look ahead to. But there's only one place to start, and that is in one of the craziest games that I think any of us have ever been at. Luton Town 3, Swansea City 3. All three of us were at Kenilworth Road on the weekend. It was my first away game since the South Wales derby in 2019, which finished 0-0 and could not have been any more different to the match that I saw on Saturday. Steve, we've got to go through it in stages. Let's start off with the first half. How bad was it?
It was bad. I was at Preston a few weeks ago, and the second half there was incredibly bad. And I would say that this was sort of on a par, really, wasn't it? We conceded sloppy goals. We didn't really offer any threat going forward. What can you say, really? Pretty much everything that could go wrong did. And I think if you're looking at, we made 3 subs at half time, for example. I think, a lot of them could really have been taken off. And you could argue the ones that were taken off probably didn't deserve to be singled out in some way. It's just that you have to change it. But yeah, it was a half of, were there any positives in the first half? I'm really not sure there were.
No, I mean, the one positive was that it was only 3-0 at halftime. It could have easily been 4. Luton absolutely demolished us. Their high press, we couldn't cope with it. We couldn't play around it. Our decision making was abysmal. We didn't really have any kind of shape. Decision making was shocking, absolutely appalling. And Matt, I think it's fair to say a lot of fans really turned on that team in the first half, and the atmosphere got really nasty at times, didn't it?
Yeah, it wound me up. I just thought it's the same. I mean, I think we were all united when Cooper was replaced by Russell Martin, but I thought that this is going to take time. This is 2 years of anti-football. No one's going to sit here and say Cooper didn't, get incredible results, because he did. But Russell Martin wants to come in and rip up the whole style and build us back brick by brick. And that's with no pre-season. And, we've had COVID run rampant through the camp as well. It's just been such a rush start for him. The first break he had was the international break last week. And to hear the fans, quite a lot. Well, I say quite a lot. There was a group of fans who wanted Russell Martin sacked. This was after about 20 minutes of the game. And I just thought, God, the season's kicked off 6 weeks ago. It's just mental. But this is football for you. This is football fans. They're so impulsive and so knee-jerk, and I was infuriated, because I was just thinking, for me, the story will stay the same from now until May. It's about survival this season and building and seeing progress with the style, because for me, you can't realistically think that we are going to be, challenging the top 3-4 in this division this year. I think to do this now, we have to start and build it all back again. And I think we've seen, the stats have backed it up as well. The football we're playing, we're dominating the ball, we're playing the least long balls in the whole division, and everything is showing that the building blocks are being put into place to make this.
In fairness, Matt, in that first half on Saturday, we couldn't see any of that. It was a shock, and the fans were turning on Hamer and every single outfield player. There were so many mistakes that they didn't really seem to know what they were doing, and it did, in fairness, look like there had been very little progress since the opening day, because once again we came up against a pressing side, having played against a couple of teams recently who've sat back and invited us to attack, and we could not cope with that press in any way, shape or form, and they destroyed us in that first half.
He's not immune to criticism, and there's plenty out there which is valid. The fans singing to get him out, I think, is incredibly premature. And I think Russell Martin, provided we stay out of the bottom three, I think he deserves the season at least to really try and put something in place. But yeah, it was awful. It really was. And you could say, there are a lot of things where the Swans sometimes try to overplay it or try to be a bit too cute in dangerous positions, and sloppy pass and then invites pressure on. I'm not particularly a fan of playing two men behind the sole single striker. I'd much prefer to go two strikers up there and one man in behind, namely Olivier and Jam, to play in that hole, because I feel like at the moment the sole striker is isolated. And you saw in the second half, it was a lot more dynamic. We were on the front foot. Luton couldn't get out of their 18-yard box. It was that dominant. But yeah, the first half was shambles. The goals, all three of them, were sloppy, poor defending. And there was a lot of arguments going on amongst the away end. But you know what? I think what we're going to come on to now is the reason why I think we need to be patient with this team.
Well, before we get to that, I mean, quickly, Steve, there were two moments of refereeing controversy in the first half. One of them was the penalty inside or outside the box. I don't know what you two think. I felt at the time that it was definitely outside. The replays that I've seen, I would say, suggest that it looks just outside. It is a tight one. I don't know what you thought about that, but the one that's been discussed most, Steve, on social media, it's been shared widely now, is Henry Lansbury's kick on Ryan Manning, which interestingly got Manning a yellow card and also Henry Lansbury a yellow card. Did you think the referee got that one right?
He didn't get either of them right, in my opinion. But that one, I mean, like the Manning one, I had quite a good view of it, actually. I was probably quite lucky that there was no pillar in the way or anything. But at the time, it was like he's kicked him completely off the ball, really. I mean, there's no attempt to play it. And I did watch the highlights yesterday, and like even on the Football League show, they did pretty much, I think it was Joby McAnuff did say that he could have pulled out of that if he wanted to. I mean, that was shocking, really. I mean, that should be a straight red every day of the week. And from my point of view with the penalty, he hasn't half made a meal of it. I'd go as far as to say it's pretty much a dive. There's not enough in it.
Oh, I don't know. I thought his heel was clipped, I'll be honest. I did think Norton had got himself into a real mess and got too tight to him and clipped his heel, I thought. I thought it was a foul, but I thought it was outside the box.
Well, like I say, whatever, he definitely was looking for it, wasn't he? And he has conned the ref, essentially, with that one. But it's funny how the ref saw that, didn't he? But he had just as good a view as the Manning one and gives nothing. So I think a nice little trip to Specsavers is on the agenda for him.
Matt, what do you think? Because that Manning one in particular, it's so random. It really is just not the kind of thing you expect to see. And I was actually surprised that there weren't more calls from the away fans for it to be a red at the time, because there was a bit of off. But like when you think about the force with which he kicked Manning, I was amazed that they weren't baying for blood.
It was I think the more you see it, the more horrific it gets, really, doesn't it? And it really is one of those ones where you think, if you watch it, you go, oh my God, what the hell's he playing at? And then you get told that he was booked for it. That's when you just go, what? No, wait, I thought this was just like, look at this awful challenge. Like, he might get a 6-match ban for assault. And then you find out he wasn't actually sent off for it when, it was clear as day. But I think our editor, Danny J, actually, he said on Twitter, he was very much of the opinion that it might have done us a favour, and I agree with him. I do. I think it's 10-man Luton, 3-0 up, are going to put 10 men behind the ball and make it difficult for us to find pockets of space. But we managed to get up in between them in the second half, and maybe it benefited us that they didn't have him sent off in the end, and a nice little bit of karma with what happened in the end.
Yeah, I actually agree with Danny there. I thought the same kind of thing after reading Street. Yeah, probably it would have worked in Luton's favour had they gone down to 10 men and they just said, okay, we'll park the bus and we'll protect what we've got, do what Hull and Millwall had done in the previous matches and just try to frustrate Swansea. It may have been that we'd still put in that kind of second half performance and turned it around, but I think it probably would have been more in Luton's interest actually to just play it safe from that point on. From my point of view, I agree with Steve and Joby McAnuff. There's no way that Henry Lansbury doesn't know what he's doing there. I mean, he can see Manning. Manning is standing right over the ball. I saw somebody try to defend it on Twitter earlier today, saying that Lansbury's eyes are on the ball and he can't see Manning. How can you not see Manning? He was standing right next to the ball. To say that he couldn't see Manning is just...
It's worth pointing out for those who have denied it. Watch it back and watch it with the mindset of take Manning out of that picture. Look at where the ball is before Manning kicks it. He still doesn't get the ball even if Manning isn't there. And he goes for Manning. The ball is not there even before Manning kicks it. So when Manning kicks it, it's sheer frustration. And I don't know why, because they're 3-0 up. But even if Manning doesn't touch that ball, he kicks thin air then. Because
I personally think it's violent conduct. I think Lansbury knows, don't get me wrong, Manning knows what he's doing as well. He's playing, he's trying to slow the ball down and make a nuisance of himself and trying to wind up the opposition. But Lansbury can see Manning. He knows what's going on and he sees a chance for a cheap shot.
Yeah.
But even if you accept the argument that he was trying to kick the ball and then Manning kicks it out of his way and it's a pure accident, and therefore, not violent conduct, I still think there's a very strong argument to say that it's serious foul play, because the force with which he kicked Manning, shin height, it's, in all honesty, if a leg is planted the wrong way, that can cause you a serious injury. It was that brutal a kick, and the referee played extremely safe by showing yellow card. And I think if he got the chance to watch it back properly, I think he'd probably agree that he should have shown a red card. But in the end, boys, it didn't actually make that much of a difference, because the second half performance could not have been more different, Steve. And instantly when they came out after half time, the shots started raining in, and it just kept on going, and that set the tone for the entire second half.
Yeah, it was a big improvement. I mean, it seems to almost have this attitude a little bit that we didn't have a lot to lose, because obviously the game looked completely hopeless and 3-0 down, as you'd expect, really. But we did start to play a lot better, didn't we? I think what Matt was saying, really. I mean, I think from my point of view, playing Grimes and Downs in the same team is quite cautious at times. And I can understand it in some games, but I'm not sure it's entirely worked, and it doesn't then allow us to create many good chances. So I felt that putting in Cham a little bit deeper actually worked very well, for example, and that was one of the key reasons for me, while we did do a little bit better. But it was, the other thing I did quite like was when there was a little bit of space for us to take a shot from outside the box, we seemed to be doing it rather than looking for that extra pass, which sometimes is what we do, and then the move breaks down. But obviously, really, all 3 goals are outside the box, and that's incredibly rare for us, really, but I think very encouraging as well. But I mean, there's probably one other thing we should discuss, which is at 3-0, I'm pretty sure they had a breakaway and hit the post. I mean, if that goes in, I dread to think what would have happened. But it didn't, and we saw probably one of the great all-time Swans comebacks. I certainly can't remember one as good as that.
It really was. And like you said, there are these sliding doors moments in matches, aren't there? It's a bit like the Reading 4-1 final day match 2 seasons ago. There were plenty of chances there for Reading to kill off our playoff hopes in the dying minutes of that match, but they kept on wasting them, and we managed to take advantage. And you just need that little bit of luck to go your way in those circumstances. And perhaps, Matt, we got a little bit of luck with, well, at least one of the goals, because Patterson's shot from the edge of the area definitely took a big deflection, which certainly caught out Simon Sluga, and that kicked off the comeback. Olivier Ncham's goal, it's superb, but how much of it was down to the deflection, you think?
I mean, first of all, with Patterson, he's someone's watching down and smiling on him, because there's no way he should have scored at Blackburn opening day. The goalkeeper practically threw that in the net. And again, there's no way that keeper shouldn't save that. I mean, when you get a solid hand to it and someone managed to still palm it behind yourself into the net, it's awful, awful goalkeeping. And deflection or not, I mean, deflections to me only, get you out the danger if you then, you obviously with your weight on the wrong side, you can't dive over to get to it. But if you are then getting a solid hand to it, excuses go out the window. Then you need to be keeping that out of the net. And Chams, you don't know. I mean, you don't know where that would have ended up. Certainly, the fact that it slices off the backside of the defender, gives it a wicked spin, and ends up. For me, it's certainly top 3 goals of the weekend. It was a phenomenal hit. It was just great at that point. To note what you were both saying just now, that all 3 goals were outside the box and we were hitting them, and that was what I think when I was saying earlier about Russell Martin not being immune to criticism. For me, one of the things you could level up the Swans in previous years was that we weren't taking chances early, and someone like Joel Pirro epitomizes exactly the shift in mentality that I like to see, because he's a man who will take a touch and shoot as soon as he gets a sniff of goal. He's had plenty this season already. They haven't all gone in, but it just shows with his goal tally already that you don't score without shooting, and if you do hit it, you've always got a chance. And he's a man who is full of confidence, full of belief in his own ability, and he hits them early. He always hits them early, and the keepers can't get set. And I really like that about him.
Very different to Andre Ayew, who is a fantastic player. Don't get me wrong.
4 touches, didn't he? I think with Ayew, and he was notorious for it. But you can't, as you say, you can't discount his all-round ability, Andre Ayew. But when it came to split-second opportunities, he would sooner take the next touch and then try and bend it in the far corner, whatever, which when it worked, fabulous, whatever. But Perrault doesn't always need to bend it beautifully into the far corner, because he lacked on instinct. And when you watch that 3rd goal back, the keeper is pretty much standing on his near post where the ball hits the back of the net. It's another shocker, at least 2 of the goals, being Patterson and Perrault's, he should have saved. But just goes to show, if you take shots and you have a go, you always got a chance. And all 3 of those goals were us taking a shot when, in years gone by, we might have played it out wide and passed it sideways, and it was great. I think we were talking before we started recording, Guto, there was a certain feeling in the away end second half. There was this kind of belief. We were camped in their half, weren't we? They could not get out of the 18-yard box, a lot of it, but certainly their half was under siege, and that was the change in mentality, as you both mentioned, the have a go mentality, the nothing to lose, and that's what I hope Russell Martin takes from it. Is whilst there was a bit of oh well, we could just do this now, we've already pretty much lost this game, but I hope he takes a little bit of that and realizes that a lot of that is applicable to games in the first half against teams like Luton. You can get at them and hit shots and start pressuring them at the back early doors. And then we saw that second half. And I hope he takes both sides of it and realizes that there's a lot to be learned from that side of it, as well as the fact that, the defensive mistakes in the first half have got to dry up. But it was great. The whole comeback, the atmosphere in the second half, the climactic finish, it was... I don't think I'll ever forget it, to be honest with you.
And Steve, I mean, Matt said there that there was a feeling after that second goal, right, we're back in this and there is a real chance that we can get something out of this. And you heard the crowd react to it. And there was just this feeling that I just turned, I was there with my sister and I turned to her and I said, imagine if we can get a third here. Imagine what will happen. And then it reached the point where we didn't have to imagine anymore. And I mean, added time, when you've been 3 goals down and your striker comes up with that effort to make it 3-3, and suddenly pandemonium is unleashed, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows you, doesn't it, why football is the greatest game. I mean, surely nothing else can bring you such joy, if you know what I mean. And in the same way, nothing can bring you the despair of the first half. I mean, yeah, we've got that second. I mean, we were pushing after we got the first. I felt we were pushing. And then we had a bit of a lull, and I wasn't sure it was coming. When we got the second, then you're thinking there's 5 minutes left. And then the board goes up. You see 6 minutes, and you're thinking, well, there's definitely enough time here to get it. The cynic in me said it'll be typical if we'll get a second to give us that glimmer of hope, and then we won't get the third. But to be fair, it was a really good move. And then, as Matt has been saying about Pirro, really, he doesn't need much of an invitation to shoot, and then when that goes in, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's been a long time since we've seen fans on the pitch and stuff like that, but that's the emotion of the moment, isn't it? I mean, it was a hopeless situation at half time, and so to rescue something, and we all know what it's like. If there's something about that last minute goal, and it's there's not a feeling like it, I don't think. And yeah, obviously we've had to miss quite a lot the last 18 months, so those moments are even more special then, aren't you? Because we've been starved of them.
It was amazing. I just remember, so the goal went in, I turned, kind of jumped up and down for like 2 seconds. And next thing I turn around and everything's just gone berserk. There are crowds of fans on the pitch. The subs bench is emptied. There's a smoke bomb going off in the box. Everybody's climbing over each other. Honestly, it's quite possibly the maddest response to a goal I can remember at an away game.
When you think about it as well, it was only 800 fans there. There could have been 8,000 at that point, Guto.
The great thing about Luton is it's a small ground. It's about the same size as the Vetch. And that away end is fantastic because the roof really keeps the noise in. It's everybody's really crammed in, and nobody's sitting down, everybody's standing. It is ideally suited for that kind of atmosphere. And it was like just somebody had stacked up a bunch of firewood, and that goal just lit the match. And just, well, I say a pile of firewood. It was firewood with fireworks mixed in with it, because it just exploded at that stage. It absolutely, everybody in that stand lost control, apart from the one man who I saw on the replays just casually standing there and clapping. Fair play to him for keeping his cool while everybody else around him was losing.
Don't know why he bothers going.
If that doesn't get you, excited, then nothing will. But it was just, an incredible scene. And the thing is, it could have actually got better, because the Swans, at that stage, we still had a couple of minutes left to play. And there was one moment where Ethan Laird got past Seaman Sluga, pulled the ball back, and I was starting to think, oh my gosh, is this going to be 4? I can't actually imagine what it would have been like had a 4th gone in.
To be fair, we've done Luton a favour, because I think Kenilworth Road would have lost its safety certificate had we scored a 4th in the 96th minute, as it were. Obafemi, he just couldn't quite, beat his man to the open goal there. But if it had gone in, then I dread to think. There certainly would have been injuries in the away end, because it was absolutely insane after the equaliser. So thankfully, the general mood was as absolutely gone as the game was. 3-3 was enough to send everyone home in absolutely delirious spirits. So it didn't matter too much in the day. And when the dust settles and you look at it and you think, oh God, can you imagine if we had, as you just said? But 3-3 was enough for fans, and yeah, for the safety of everyone concerned, I think 3-3 might have been the best result, because it was, as you've already described, it was quite chaotic, to say the least. Like you say, fans on the pitch, flares in the box. Yeah, ref might have had to take the players off the pitch if we'd scored a 4th.
I don't think there would have been a pitch left, if I'm being honest. If you said there, it felt like a win. I remember walking back to the town centre and just checking my phone to see, oh gosh, what's that done to the table? And then seeing that we were level with the team 3rd from bottom, I was thinking, oh yeah, we didn't win, did we? We only got a draw, but it didn't feel like that in any way, shape, or form because it was, it was the celebrations were what you'd expect for a win. And I mean, Steve, that we've slated the first half performance, but how good was that second half performance? And I gotta give a special mention to Olivia and Cham because it's a long time since I've seen an individual performance that good from a Swansea City player.
Yeah, like you say, it was superb, wasn't it? We just seemed to play with this like freedom, didn't we? I think is probably the best way to describe it. As you say, and Cham was superb. I mean, the goal capped it off, really, didn't it? But he was always seemed to be on the ball. He was playing nice passes. He was driving a team. So I think the thing within Cham is, I'm sure we'll talk about our transfer business at some point, but I mean, he's probably the type of player that on ability shouldn't be with us. I think there's obviously been a couple of issues with him where, maybe off the field stuff, or maybe his attitude has not been right or something like that. Because, I mean, he was very good when he was at Celtic under Rodgers, but obviously after he left, it didn't seem to be the same for him. But, I mean, I could easily see him maybe staying here for a season and then someone coming in and giving us a decent transfer fee for him, for example. So I think we are lucky in that sense to have him. We've taken what is probably a little bit of a gamble, maybe. But on ability, I mean, I think we've seen it now, haven't we? That this is a guy who could really be a top player for us, I think, in this division, really. So it's a lot to be encouraged about, isn't there, with him?
Yeah, absolutely. And there were a lot of players in that second half. I mean, the entire team played brilliantly in that second half. But Matt, I mean, others who stood up, Piru, not too bad for what one former director said was the worst player that we'd ever buy. He's not doing too badly, is he? I thought Patterson, who does blow hot and cold, I thought he was absolutely fantastic in that second half. Grimes really upped his game. And I thought Ethan Laird was an absolute constant threat down that right side and absolutely tormented Luton's left back. And he really does look like he's going to be a serious weapon in this league.
Well, I thought for a moment there you were going to, omit Ethan Laird, which I was going to jump in and say, but I'm glad you mentioned him because what a signing he's proven to be already. I mean, he looks every bit, and you may laugh at this and you may tell me it's premature. I think he's a better player than Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I do. I watch. You see a lot of Premier League football.
That's premature. That's premature.
You could say that, but I look at him and I think he's got more about his game. And he's fantastic. He's such a threat, and I've no doubt he makes his mark in the Premier League in the next 18 months. I really do. I think he's waiting to make it, and there's really looking at it and saying that Connor Roberts came a stage here and came back into this team, they'd have to play on opposite wings because unfortunately I don't think Connor Roberts unseats Ethan Laird in this team. I know he's gone now, so that's a conversation that is null and void. But in terms of, we were talking about having two options that side, well, he'd have to play on a different side because Ethan Laird is just offering the constant threat. As you say, he tormented the defence, but he's been doing that since the start of the season. And there's nothing that he isn't afraid. It's nothing, that he is afraid to do. I mean, he can run around the outside of a man and beat him for pace every time. But also, as we see on many occasions, he's happy to put his foot on it and then run inside with the ball as well. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't with him. You don't want to, normally with a winger or wing back, you want to show him outside, show him onto his weak side. But I'm not really sure he's got a weak side, to be honest. He looks. We knew when he signed him that he could play either side of the defence, which already gave us a little bit of a hint of his ability to work at either side. But what we're seeing is he's there. He's there for us, and he's got that ability to really make a difference when we need it. And fortunately, that sort of player can stretch teams and make you more dangerous on the attack because you're going to have to get someone out to him. And as we saw with the equaliser, it just creates that pocket of space. Then Joao Pirou, superb to hang his run back. I mean, most strikers you'd think would make a dart into the box there, but he was clever enough to say, do you know what? everyone's running into that box. I'm going to hang back 20 yards out, ask for the ball. He gets it and then dispatches it brilliantly. And I think that there is great footballing intelligence, both from Pirot and Ethan Laird, to make sure that it was, we got the equaliser, which we deserved in the end. But notable mentions to the players you have mentioned as well. I thought as well, Ryan Bennett, again, I thought his passing, which is one of the big criticism I had after the Blackburn game. In fact, there's that criticism of the whole defence, to be honest with you. But I think now his passing's come on so much in such a short space of time that I've been proved wrong, or I'm being proved wrong at least. He's looking more composed. He's spending as much time on the right wing as he is at centre back now.
It's just weird. It's a weird sight seeing right on the right wing.
He hasn't got the frame, the pace, or much of what you'd expect from a right winger, to be honest with you. But he's getting up there, and as one of my mates said earlier, it's only a matter of time before he gets on the end of a cross in open play, because I think he's getting up the pitch more and more, and it's just something you don't expect to see. But no, it's great. There was a lot of great performances in that second half in particular, and as I mentioned earlier on, it's just something to, when they look back on the game, it says much about what they did wrong in the first half, but what they did right in the second half as well. Because as you say, Grimes was superb. The shift in tactical nous to put in Cham there and give us a different option rather than two sit-in centre midfielders, and give us a little bit more mobility in the middle and more forward thrust. And we saw that with Patterson's goal. And Cham runs that ball fully 40 yards, up the pitch before he squares it to Patterson. And it just gives us that drive from midfield, which we were otherwise lacking. So hopefully there's lessons that will come out of this game that will stand us in great stead for the rest of the season, because there was plenty to admire about that second half. Yeah,
absolutely fantastic. It basically summed up that match, possibly how much more work we have got to do, judging by the first half performance, but that second half performance really showed the potential in this side, and hopefully will act as a bit of a springboard going forward. Just before we move on to discuss other things, we unfortunately have to talk about the less savoury side of Saturday's match. You've all probably read the reports that Rhys Williams was allegedly racially abused by somebody in the home crowd, which is absolutely despicable. It's unfortunately far from the first time that one of our players has had to put up with this kind of racist abuse. It usually happens online. To see it happen in a stadium is definitely a throwback, but it just shows the problem the football's got at the moment. And sadly, we as a club can't take the moral high ground on this issue, because the racism wasn't isolated to that incident. A number of us heard racist chanting from Swansea City fans in the second half, including, on top of that as well, Tommy Robinson's name being chanted, which is depressing beyond belief, I'll be honest. It says a lot about a certain section of our fans who still live in the dark ages, and who thankfully, judging by the response of fans around them, are not welcome, quite frankly, because plenty of people turned around to them and told them to shut up in no uncertain terms. But the fact that these people actually tried to get these chants started in the first place is just disgusting. And it's not the first time that we've heard this. I've heard it down the years in places like Leicester and Birmingham, other places which have large South Asian populations. It's a problem that we still have. There are these people who think that football gives them that cover still to be racist and to get their abhorrent opinions voiced. And sadly, we are, like I said, in no position to take that moral high ground then when one of our players is abused, because we've got our own problems. And it's come to the point now where if we go to somewhere like Luton, somewhere like Birmingham or Leicester, which have substantial ethnic minority populations, it's something that we've got to have in the back of our heads, that there are people out there who will try to use that as an excuse. And the important thing is that we as decent fans make it known to them that they don't have a place in there. So sorry to end it on a dampener there, but it's important that we do call it out, and it's important that we do actually draw attention when it's our own fans doing it, as well as when it's opposition fans. Moving on now, Steve, to a subject which isn't much cheerier. We're going to quickly run through a few of the games that we haven't discussed on the pod, stretching all the way back, first of all, before the international break, to Preston. You went up there just very quickly. Tell us how bad it was.
Well, to be fair, we started all right, and obviously we scored a nice goal. Cullen with a little flick, and then I had that feeling with Pirro. Once he got in, he just got that goal scoring knack. I just thought, this is going in, and it went. And within a couple of minutes, Preston equalised, and it was all really downhill from there. We conceded a disappointing one just before half time, and then Bender with a bit of a rush of blood came out and clattered the Preston player. He could have been off. It was a bit of a strange one to see him get a yellow, because from where I was thinking, well, if that's a foul, he should probably go. If it's not, obviously, then it shouldn't be a free kick and nothing. But so to see him get a yellow was a bit of a strange one, I thought. But Preston scored from the free kick, and then after that, we were really, really poor, if I'm honest with you. I'm not sure we actually had a touch in their box in the second half, which was quite disturbing, considering the fact I don't think Preston are much of a side at all. So, yeah, it wasn't great. I mean, I wasn't too alarmed, purely because I think, again, we were missing a couple of players from COVID. There'd been a lot of issues in there. I think there were 7 games in 22 days. The manager only came in 5 days before the first one. A disappointing start was hardly a massive shock, in my opinion. And, obviously, it was disappointing, but it happens, doesn't it? And then, if anything, the good thing probably was that the transfer window was open, and that obviously then maybe gave us that bit of a push to think, right, well, maybe we do need to get another couple of players in here, because we haven't had a great start of the season.
Yeah, and Matt, we then had the transfer deadline day, which we'll discuss in a bit. We had the 2-week international break, which acted as a bit of a mini pre-season for Russell Martin. And then we got 2 quickfire home games against Hull and Millwall, 2 teams who are down towards the bottom end of the table, along with the Swans. You'd have thought it was a good chance to get our first home win of the season, but 2 0-0 results, 2 0-0 draws, where the Swans dominated the ball, but and had chances in a couple of these games, but couldn't quite find that clinical touch to win them. How did you view these matches? Were you kind of glass half full or glass half empty afterwards?
I surprised myself this season, Guto. I find myself a lot more optimistic and patient with what we're doing, because I think I can see what we're trying to do as well, and I know that this won't happen overnight. So when we look at, in particular, the Hull game, I thought was superb. I mean, they were hanging on for dear life. They offered absolutely nothing, and we could still be playing now, and it would be Hull nil, because we were just all over them. And I think we did everything but score, which is unfortunate. The game is about scoring more than the opposition, and we couldn't do that. But I thought the Hull game was a real marker for a performance level that we can expect to see when Russell Martin gets it right. And it was noted that where you mentioned earlier that the first half at Luton, when they pressed us, we had nothing like Blackburn. Well, Hull and Millwall were not interested in coming out of their half, really, in the last week, and I think that told with the dominance which you just mentioned. But I was impressed that it wasn't dominance without the purpose against Hull. To a lesser extent, Millwall as well. I didn't think Millwall was quite as much of a battering, but and to be fair to them, they did have a couple of chances themselves. We could have snatched it, but I thought the Hull game was great. I thought if we could perform like that, I think we'll win 8 times out of 10. But you can't account sometimes for being incredibly unlucky or not quite getting the final touch on a cross and stuff. But performance-wise is good. I just wanted us to get that little bit. If we get the ball in the back of the net, it pleases everyone then, because the purists, if you like, the ones who first and foremost want to see good football, and then the results will come, will be happy with what they saw. But also the fans that are a little bit more results based and just think, right, okay, if we start winning soon, we're in real trouble, which, you know, is not an invalid argument by any stretch, but maybe the fans that want to see more instant results, they would have been pleased as well. So, you know, it's finding a balance. Clearly Russell Martin has one plan, and that's plan A, and he wants to push that agenda as much as he can. And good for him. I mean, he's not going to suddenly start lumping the ball forward. He's not going to start trying to play knockdowns off the big man or anything like that. Not that we've got one to do it with, but you know what I mean. He wants to get plan A right and work it properly. And you know, they'll come if we keep playing like that. And I think they were positive performances on the whole.
Steve, what about you? I mean, 2 0-0 draws. That's 1 goal in 4 home games so far this season in the league, and that came in a 3-1 defeat to Stoke. Is that something that concerns you? The fact that we haven't been able to find the back of the net against what, for the most part, have been, you know, struggling sides in Sheffield United, Hull, and Millwall.
Yeah, it's not great, is it? I mean, you can't dress it up. You know, I think against Hull, we were a bit unlucky. I thought we were the better side, as Matt said, really. I mean, you know, we should have had a penalty for the Laird one. And I think that the Manning one could have been one as well. So, you know, that if we'd got the penalty and then got the win, that would have made a bit of a difference. And I also think as well, if we'd got a penalty in that game, the game may have opened up a bit, because Hull, you know, were quite negative, weren't they? They were just sitting deep, and sometimes it can be a case of if you get that one goal, then you might well get another one, purely because the opposition then have to do something and their game plan's been undone. So, you know, I think the Millwall performance wasn't as good, but arguably we did create better chances in that game. I mean, the Obafemi one he was a little bit unlucky. I think the Patterson one in the first half, I mean, if Laird hasn't blasted the ball at him and just plays it nicely along the floor in the box, then he probably would have scored that. So, yeah, I think we just have to be patient, really, don't we? I think it will improve. I think, if I'm honest, after the way we've finished at Luton, I would like to see us start with that team rather than playing with Grimes and Downs, as I said earlier, and also playing with 2 up front, because I think that will give us a bit more of a purpose. Because obviously it's great to see us get those 3 goals in the second half the other day, but before that it was 4 goals in 7.5 games, and obviously that's nowhere near good enough, is it? So, you know, I'm hoping now that we've played with that team and it worked, that we will start with that this Saturday, and hopefully then we'll have a bit more of a cutting edge.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've taken about 10 minutes to discuss Preston, Hull and Millwall, while the Luton chat seemed to go on for 2 hours. I'm sure you won't mind that as listeners this week. We'll just go back again now to discuss transfers, because the end of the transfer window was pretty hectic, as it always seems to be these days at Swansea City. The big news, I guess, is the biggest news probably was the departure of Connor Roberts, player who's, you know, been at Swansea since he was a little kid, a Swansea City fan, a player who we've all, you know, loved watching over the last few years. But Matt, it was time to say goodbye, and he's gone to Burnley. What was your impression of the transfer as a whole? Obviously a disappointment to lose him, but can you understand from Roberts' perspective going to the Premier League, and from the club's perspective to cash in on him, as he enters the final year of his contract?
Yeah, and only surprise, I guess, is well, I suppose it's twofold. First one is that Roberts was the one to go out of the sellable assets in their final year, because he was injured, so that perhaps he would be the one that would stay for that purpose. And the second shock was that once it happened, he was the only one to go, because I thought maybe that that Grimes deal would have been the done deal of the day, really. It seemed, you know, prolonged interest there, and but Roberts is, you know, he deserves a shot at the Premier League. He does. He's been a standout performer for us for a number of years now, and I think his game has improved. I think he certainly found his position really as a wing back. I think he perhaps previously wasn't quite as comfortable at right back, but once he's been given the license to maraud up and down the wing, well, he's like the Duracell bunny, isn't he? He can go and go and go all game, and he's got an end product, which isn't something you can say for all full-backs. He not only produces the goals, we can score them as well. So he's got a lovely knack of arriving in the box at the right time. So there's no doubt why he's got the potential to make in top flight. Always a gutter when you lose a local lad come good, though, isn't there? And for me, he epitomised the Graham Potter team, the one we all fell in love with, because everyone may as well have been born and raised in Landau in that team. It felt like everyone played with passion for the shirt, and he epitomised that attitude. So yeah, gutted to see him go, but wish him all the best, and hopefully he makes a real mark for Burnley. And transfer deadline day in itself was busy enough for us, so we'll get on with it.
Yeah, another player who left, Steve, was Jamal Lowe. How do you think he's going to be remembered by Swansea City fans?
I think obviously the standout moment is the double at Cardiff, and it's just a crying shame that we weren't there, because that would have been one of the all-time great away days, probably even better than Saturday, which I don't say lightly. But yeah, I think from my point of view, Jamal Lowe didn't really suit us. I thought that from day one, really. I mean, don't see him as a striker, see him as more of a wide player. This manager doesn't want to play with wide players. I don't think he suited him, and I think the reason that he was sold for what was probably not a great price was that it was reliant on him going to get Michael Obafemi, and then that was a player that the manager clearly wanted. So yeah, I think just one of those things. No problem with Jamal Lowe. I wish him well, and yeah, I think that's probably a better move for him rather than sticking around here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does, at a club where he's going to face some competition. I don't think he's going to be a regular starter, and see if he can make the breakthrough there. But yeah, it seems, that Lowe didn't really feel that he had a place at Swansea going forward long term. But in the year that he was with us, he scored 14 goals in a team that didn't really score many goals, and certainly played his part in getting us to the playoffs. A lot of incoming players. We'll go through them quickly, Matt. Rhys Williams, Olivier Ntcham, Michael Obafemi. Which one of those on deadline day excited you the most?
Well, it was one of the front two, really. I actually really like the threat that Obafemi provides, but just for sheer stature in the game already, and the fact that he had obviously the caliber to play at in the European level, and as Steve mentioned earlier on, Olivier Ntcham is potentially worth quite a few £1 million, and not at this level either. So I think I get, with absolutely no disrespect to either player, if anyone misinterprets this, I get Leroy Fer vibes, in that I always felt with Leroy that he had the ability. That was never in question. He was, when he wanted to turn it on, he was the best player on the park. And with Fer, I always thought too often he didn't want to turn it on. Now, I've got no such concerns with Ntcham at the moment, but that was the one thing the Celtic fans said about him when we signed him, was that you've got a hell of a player if he can be asked. And so that's where I got the comparison from. But hopefully we keep him tuned in and keep him enthused for the project, because at the moment he's proven why he's played at such a level, because he's certainly something we were lacking, and he provides a lot of attributes which we need on the pitch. So I was excited by him, and I've not been disappointed so far.
Yeah, I think the Leroy Fer comparison in terms of style is a pretty valid one. He's a player that receives the ball on the half turn, looks to get us moving forward, and at his best, he just oozes class. Hopefully he can show a bit more consistency than Leroy Fer did. Fer was, brilliant on his day, but pretty awful when he didn't want to be. Didn't really feel up for it. Steve, one of the main stories of transfer deadline day, and Matt's touched on it, is Matt Grimes, who didn't move anywhere, despite widespread speculation that he would be going. So a lot of people thought it was a done deal even, but he stayed, despite the fact that there were bids for him. Are you surprised that the Swans put up a fight to keep Grimes? And considering apparently the alternative had he left was Tariq Fosu from Brentford, do you think we made the right choice in keeping Grimes? Because this has really divided opinion among fans too.
I think we may have made a mistake, if I'm honest. I mean, I like Grimes, I always have. But when a player is in the last year of his contract, and I personally don't think he's going to sign an extension, from what I've heard, that indicates to me that maybe we should have just moved him on, because, you could have got a few quid in it. And if we're honest, I mean, we've got quite a lot now of deeper midfielders, but we are lacking players for the number 10 position. And Fosu would have been a really good addition in that sense. So, if I'm honest, I think maybe we should have done that deal. I mean, from my point of view, I'd rather a different midfielder would have left. But the fact is, there was interest in Grimes. He's got a year left. We would have been able to command the fee for him. Sometimes you need to maybe do a deal like that where you sell someone you'd rather not sell ideally, but it's the right thing for the team, and you bring someone else in a position that is you maybe need more. I mean, I made this point to someone the other day about, you look at when the Swans sold Ben Davies, I'd say pretty much everybody didn't want him to go, and I was one of those people. But that deal then allowed us to bring in Sigurdsson, and that made us a better team in a position that we really needed strengthening. And you look back at it and say that we did the right thing. So, I mean, sometimes that's the type of decision I think that we should have made. So, time will tell. At the end of the day, if Grimes could well leave on a free in the next summer, and that'll be disappointing. But we'll just have to wait and see how it pans out. But when we are struggling for goals and struggling for creativity, I can't help but think that maybe I wish we had sacrificed Grimes and brought Fosu in, if I'm honest.
What about you, Matt? How do you think of this? Because obviously Fosu would have been a loan deal for a year, but Matt Grimes is probably only here for a year. When you look at his age and contract situation, it would be surprising at this stage if he turned around and committed his long-term future to the Swans. So who would we have got the most out of for that remaining year, Matt Grimes or Tariq Fosu?
I agree with Steve. I haven't got a massive amount to add to it, to be honest with you. I think I'm probably not as high in the if you follow me on Twitter, you probably know I'm probably not as high in the Matt Grimes fan club as others. But in terms of his what the Swans need at this time, I think Fosu would have given us something that we don't have, or we're short on at least, and Grimes is at a position of varying ability. We've got 5 or 6 players, that can play his role, and I'm not saying like for like. I'm not saying anyone is as good at it as him, but I'm just saying there are players that play in that position, and we've got plenty of them, and it would have been something I would have been doing. I think the Fosu deal as well, to add insult to injury, was actually a loan with an option to buy as well. So had the finances been agreed, which by all accounts it sounds like they were with Brentford, we'd agreed on the terms of the deal, and it was just that we decided to keep hold of Grimes that the deal collapsed. So that's the big disappointment for me, is that if we'd done a deal with Brentford in which we could have potentially this time next year be making Fosu a permanent Swansea player, that to me would have improved us as a squad and as an outfit to what I think it should be, a drive for the top 6 next season, once Russell Martin's had the opportunity to build his squad and embed his philosophy. So that would have been a great asset for me, I think. And I am disappointed, as is Steve, really, in terms that we didn't get it done. Hopefully it's not dead in the water for January. Who knows?
Yeah, I totally get the argument in terms of cashing in on Grimes and bringing in a more attacking player. But I don't think it should be underestimated either how much Grimes does contribute to this team and how much how much we need a Grimes type player in that midfield to get Russell Martin's style working properly. I don't think it should be underestimated. I think Grimes does a lot of stuff which goes under the radar as well, and he does, he's very high in the tackling stats. His passing, is very underrated. I think a lot of people say he does backwards and sideways passes, which it's been proven that that's completely wrong. But I totally understand the argument in terms of getting in a more attacking player, and who knows, at the end of the season we may look back and say, oh, we probably should have taken that opportunity. But I'm not disappointed that we've kept a player of Grimes' quality, because I do think he is, has the potential to be a really big player for us this season. I mean, looking back at the transfer window as a whole, Steve, how do you rate it? It's been one of major changes.
Yeah, it has. I suppose when you look at the players that we did lose in the summer, the likes of AU and Guay in particular, I mean, that was always going to make things difficult. I mean, it's hard to say that now that we've got a better squad than what we did maybe last season. But I certainly feel when you look at the lone players that left, and like I said, the EU had gone, I think at that point, we were weaker than what we are now. I think we do maybe lack that number 10, I think. Certainly maybe an extra option in that position anyway. But I do feel more optimistic. And the good thing from my point of view is, as much as we did have some good loan players, I think now we have invested in a couple of players. And I think there's a few of them that have got a resale value. I'm not saying I want us to sell players at all, but we've got to be realistic about these things that, the parachute payments have ended now. So financially, we probably are going to have to sell somebody every summer to sort of make us like self-sustainable. And I think with the players that we've brought in, younger players, the likes of maybe Piro, obviously he's made a very good start, hasn't he? And I think Downs is going to be a good player for us, and Cham, obviously, that one, he is a little bit older, but if he has a great season, then again there could be interest. So I think we've done well in that sense, because I think the assets that we had run dry really, and that was concerning, I would say. So I think we have done good business. I'm quite happy, but I do think it will take 2 to 3 transfer windows for this manager to have the side that he wants. So that word patience is going to be uttered again.
Yeah, and the resale value point is really important, because not that I want to bore people, but obviously the football club's a business. You need to find ways of and in the Championship, where the TV money isn't there, a lot of clubs are operating at a loss. You need those consistent sales of players to keep funding future transfers, and that's what the Swans have been doing over the last few years. That's what we're going to have to keep doing. But I think we've seen this window. It's youth. That's where the real value is. That's what clubs are paying big money for, is real promising youth talent. And when you look at a couple of the players that we've brought in permanently this summer, there is real potential there for resale value, which works out both ways for us. Either they become really good players and propel the Swans up the league, or they can go elsewhere and the Swans can benefit financially from that. Matt, what about you? How would you rate this window? And do you think Russell Martin now has enough tools in that box to do an effective job here?
Yeah, I think we could have done with another attacking player, but I don't think that's the reason, or I don't think that's exclusively the reason, at least, as to why we've had a slow start. I think we could have expected it before a ball was kicked. We should have. He didn't have a bloody pre-season year. So, I mean, the man's only really got training with us during the international break just now. So this is the point now where you start seeing the performances and hopefully in the coming weeks the results as well starting to take shape. But yeah, as far as the team's concerned, I echo both your points. I mean, Michael Obafemi on a permanent, I can't remember the actual figure, but it was cheap, wasn't it? I mean, they thought he would cost, I think they turned down, did they not turn down like 5 million from Blackburn?
I think it's around 1.2, 1.5 million or something like that. Is it?
And I'm sure they turned down like 5 from Blackburn with regards to the Adam Armstrong situation. Anyway, I think it was a lot of business that went on in the summer, which showed how ruined the market is, really, isn't it? But I was happy, like you say, and Chams come in, you got Patterson come in. We did a bit of early business with the likes of Liam Walsh as well. So we've made the squad, I think, stronger in terms of, as you say, just assets on the books. Of course, we have still got, like you say, brought in Reece Williams, you bring in Ethan Laird on loan, but you do beef up your squad with loan players. I think overall, our squad is strong, and I think the likes of it's always a gamble from the Eredivisie, but Joel Pirot is proving himself. Excuse me, I think my Alexa thinks I've just woken her up, so apologies for that. I just taken a plug over. Joel Pirot is proven so far to be the right side of the risk in terms of the signings from that division. He's come in and scored a few early goals, which always helps. And I'm positive. I'm positive that now it's down to Russell Martin to get the players in the sort of mindset and playing the sort of football he wants them to. I certainly don't think when you name our starting 11 that it's noticeably weak when you compare it to other teams in this division. I think it's good enough to compete at this level. It's just the patience for the tactical side.
If Alexa wants to voice her opinion on transfers as well.
What a bitch she is. She's not sweet. She's a bitch.
She probably talks more sensible football than we do, in fairness. But we'll have to wait and see, of course, long term what the effects of that transfer window will be on the club. But it's certainly been a summer of change, as it always seems to be at the Swans. Let's finish off by looking ahead to the upcoming matches. One of which Tuesday night, Brighton away at the Amex Stadium in the League Cup. Steve, we ask this question basically every time we play a cup match. How much priority should we give to this match, and what kind of team do you think we should put out there against a Premier League side in Brighton?
Priority is obviously must win, if you are asking, but I think we've got to be realistic here. It's such a hectic schedule. It's probably one of the worst draws we could have, if we're being honest. I mean, it's such a long journey in that. I think the players that maybe haven't had a look in recently, and then maybe one or two coming back from injury, I think that would be realistic players to play. So looking at Fulton and I think Smith, Bidwell hasn't played the last couple of games. So that Brandon Cooper probably deserves another game. So looking really at those type of players, Liam Cullen, another one who's been out of the picture the last couple of weeks. So I think we've got to be realistic here. It's not really a priority for us. We need to get some points on the board in the league, ideally. And, if we go out of the cup, I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, we've got to be realistic where, as much as I would love us to win it and have another European tour, I don't think that's going to happen somehow.
Not being ambitious enough, quite frankly. Matt, we're going to be playing against Graham Potter, who is a former manager. Now, the last time we've actually played a couple of memorable League Cup matches against former managers. Of course, we played Brendan Rodgers on the way to the final in 2013, and there was that infamous away game away at Wigan against Martinez, where he did not receive a very nice response from the travelling 5,000 fans up at Wigan. There aren't going to be as many fans, let's face it, down at Brighton for this one. But what kind of reaction do you think Graham Potter will or should get from any away fans who do make the journey down to the South Coast?
I'd like to think that any abuse he gets is the sort of tongue-in-cheek abuse that football fans love to give. I think his reception should be good. I understand there's a lot of upset, or there certainly was a lot of upset about the manner of him leaving so soon after joining. But, opportunity came knocking, and he could have, I don't think it would have happened, mind you, but it could have all fallen apart next season. and he could have been left with a struggle to find his big break or his big move into the top division. So I don't begrudge him it particularly. I think he should get a good response. It could be one that we progress in as well, because I don't think Brighton are going to prioritise it. They've had a great start to the Premier League season, and I'm sure they'll want to focus on keeping that up. I'd like to see us keep over Femi, give him a chance to open his account, because Joel Piro opened his account on the first game in this cup run, if we call it that yet. So, it's always an opportunity if you can get a striker off the market that, monkey off his back, and opportunity to open his account would be great for him. So I'd like to see him given that opportunity. But as Steve said, 4, 5, 6 changes even maybe. And then it'll just be a case of quite who takes it more seriously, I think, on the day.
Yeah, well, in the last round, Brighton beat Cardiff 2-0. They totally changed their team. Cardiff had quite a few first teamers in their starting lineup, but Brighton, it was wholesale changes, and they still managed to knock Cardiff out of the cup. I'd imagine, Steve, it's a similar lineup from their point of view. Who are the players that you'd like to see get a chance to get a few more minutes and get a confidence boost and test themselves as well against a Premier League team, even if it is the reserves they put out?
Well, I think, like I've said, really, I mean, I suppose Bender will most likely regain his place in goal. Like Hamer played the early cup games, but now he's playing in the league. I think he'll be in there. I mean, like I said, Brandon Cooper seems an obvious one. I'm not sure what the latter Baudier situation was, because I think he went off at Preston. We haven't seen him since, but obviously if he's fit, deserve a look in. Bidwell, Corey Smith, Jay Fulton, Liam Cullen. I think those guys are likely to play, and but I don't think we'll make 11 changes, so you may well see a few then that played Saturday get a game. But I suppose Liam Walsh is an obvious one as well, really, because although he did start the other day, he only played 45 minutes, and he's still feeling his way back from injury. So, I think those guys they're likely to have a chance at starting, and that's what would make sense, really, because we don't want to tire anybody out who we would see as a priority for starting on Saturday.
No, absolutely not. We'll wait and see what happens in that cup match, whether the Swans go through or not. I think we're all in agreement it's not the main priority, and the league match coming up at the weekend is much more important, because Huddersfield Town come to the Liberty Stadium, Matt. They really sucker punched us twice last season. 2 games where, well, they
battered us one.
Well, I think they're quite possibly the only team that did the double over us last season, now that I think about it. I mean, the first game we were by far the better side, but they somehow managed to win 2-1. And the second game then was one where absolutely everything went just not in our favour.
They were every shot they hit the back of the net, didn't they, for like a 15-minute period?
It was an absurd game, and if it was topped off by Jordan Morris's horrendous injury as well. It was one of the worst days of the season last year.
Was that game? Was it?
Yeah, it was a really miserable afternoon, that one. So, I mean, can we look forward to better times on Saturday?
Oh, I'd hope so, wouldn't you? I don't think it can get much worse. They'll obviously look at our start of the season and think that there's an opportunity to claim an early scalp here. But no, I think it's one of those ones really where you can't predict. It's so early on the season. They're just sitting just outside the playoffs, so it's fair to say they've had a fairly decent start to the season. But the table is so tight early doors. We are only a win off 12th ourselves, so it could be all change on the weekend. It's I think it's important, again, as I mentioned earlier on, for the other half of the support, that we do start turning some of these home performances into wins now, because you can only for so long make the excuse that we'll get there before those noises of discontent and those splattered boos that were happening at the end of the Hull and Millwall games become more louder groans of discontent. And I think that's when then it doesn't help anyone because the players then start feeling the pressure. So we need to go into it and we need to fully expect and hope that we can come away with the 3 points.
Yeah, and Matt, Steve, Huddersfield's start of the season has been pretty random, really. It's much better than most people expected, but after, drawing against troubled Derby County 1-1 the first day of the season, they lost 5-1 at home to Fulham in a real calamitous performance, really, for Huddersfield. At that point, I think people thought this team is going down, really. But then they managed to get a win against Preston. They beat Sheffield United. They got 4-0 win against Reading. And then the last 3 games, they've lost 2-1 against a good Stoke City team, thrashed Blackpool 3-0, but then on the weekend lost 2-0 to Huddersfield. So it has been a bit of a random start for Huddersfield, even though they're much higher up in the table than most of us expected.
Yeah, I mean, they lost to Forest, they did, didn't they? They didn't, because you said they lost to Huddersfield, but as you say,
Forest, obviously.
Easy mistake. It is a funny one because Forest obviously have had such a shocking start to the season. And as you say, I mean, Huddersfield, you'd probably have to say, based on those results, arguably the most unpredictable team in the division. You don't really know what you're going to get from them, I suppose. So, yeah, I mean, they have struggled since they got relegated. They haven't gone down again, but I mean, hopes probably weren't particularly high for them this season. I mean, the guy that used to design my fanzine supports them, and he's always incredibly negative when you talk to him about them, and he isn't particularly confident about them this season. But I think he's been surprised by some of the good results they've had. So, I'm never confident against Huddersfield. In truth, there's been some right miserable games with them down the years. So, I'm not feeling brilliant about playing them. I'd rather play somebody else.
What the top scorer is Matty Pearson, Matt, who's a centre-back, so there's a bit of a Cardiff situation there. We've conceded, only 3 clubs in the Championship so far this season have conceded more goals from set pieces than us. Should we be worried about that threat, really? Because I think that it's quite clear that that's been a big weapon for them so far this season.
Yeah, I think, as you say, those stats do stand out in that regard, and I think it's certainly something we need to address. I think our defensive shape has left a lot to be desired for the start of this season, and I understand that it's almost making them unlearn what they'd learned and try and relearn it. But I think there is a happy medium there somewhere. I'd like to see the defenders be a little bit more. Let's make sure we get the ball out to the midfield and breathe, and then we can build from there rather than let's try and do pirouettes inside our 6-yard box. But we can build on it. It just, they get this early stage. You're right to point it out as a threat, because we a couple of days ago only showed how lax we can be at the back and how much of a risk it is when teams come at us. So if Huddersfield do put some balls in the box and they have got some set piece nous about them, then yeah, I can absolutely see that being a danger for us. But my hope is that the game on game we show some improvement and we show some understanding from the post-match research that we can pick up on, because they're not, for me, Guto, they're not like hidden. How did we manage to lose this? Or what went wrong there? I mean, for me, it's glaring at times how we are conceding these goals and how we are making continued mistakes. I mean, if you're going to take the first game of the season, for example, we got caught time and time again when we were trying to play the ball at the back, but we weren't supporting the man on the ball. So it was easy for us to lose it because there was no one within 15 yards of the man on the ball. So you can't ask them to start splitting the ball through lines on the first game of the season when you've got no one showing for it, which is a big issue we had. And I think that was clear from then, which we have improved on. Take the penalty for Luton. I mean, Norton dithers on the ball, gets caught, and whether he clips him or not, that's up for debate. But it's a massively avoidable goal, and all of the goals really were hugely avoidable. Didn't get out quickly enough to the man who volleyed the first one in, and the third one was another calamity across the 6-yard box. So all of those, we could have defended more streetwise, and I think there's a balance to be had there. And it's about identifying where they're going to try and hurt us and try to be a bit more clever about it.
Steve, it's one win at home in our last 10 league matches, including the playoff semi-final. Is this something that we should be worried about? We spoke earlier about the fact that we've only scored 1 goal at home. Is there something wrong? Well, the style of play that we've tried to play under Russell Martin, do we make it easier for teams visiting teams than we really should do by playing that style and by not really against Hull and Millwall we really played into their hands really by playing it a little bit slower and maybe giving them a chance to sit behind the ball and just defend. Is this something that we are going to find difficult this season when we play at the Liberty?
I mean, possibly. I mean, you look at Hull being a newly promoted team, and then Millwall under Gary Rowett. I think they're teams that, in general, are, they're not going to try and dominate the ball. So, but not everybody's like that. I mean, I think from Huddersfield, I think obviously they've got Marcelo Bielsa's former assistant. I think they may show a little bit more than those teams, which is probably a good thing from our point of view, because I think we've always struggled quite often when we've been a possession team against those teams that basically decide to sit in their own half and ask us to break them down. I mean, so, I think the overall record, as you say, 1 win in 10, it's not great, is it? It's not good enough, is the truth. I mean, if that continues, then we're going to have problems. But, you do look at the last couple of games, I think we definitely could have won at least one of them, I would say. I mean, the Stoke game, we were given the hiding. We can't argue there. Sheffield United, we didn't do enough to win. But I think we certainly had the chances, or maybe with the Hull game, obviously, we could have had penalties. So I would say, yeah, the last couple did give us some grounds for hope. But I mean, if you're looking at it as a whole, though, that 1 win in 10, I mean, it's not good enough. And at the end of last season, we struggled at home, didn't we? But obviously, it's a different manager. A lot of the players are not here now, so it's a bit of a clean slate, really. So it's probably more effective to look at the way of, obviously, we've had 4 home games and we haven't won any of them, rather than 1 win in 10 overall, looking at it. But we're just going to have to see how it pans out. But we do need a win soon. I mean, and if after this Saturday as well, the next home game is a must-win regardless. So let's hope we've got one on that day at least.
Steve's referring to Cardiff there, which, as we all know, is a must not lose, not a must win. We all know the rules of this derby. Come on now. It is worth pointing out, though, that the upcoming matches do look very, very difficult. Certainly more difficult than the matches we've had up until this point. It's been it's not been the toughest of opening stages to the season, but we're about to play a lot of teams around the top end of the table, including a lot of the top 6. And Huddersfield is sitting just outside that top 6. So it shouldn't really be a very easy game this weekend. And with that in mind, let's have your predictions. Matt, start with you this week. Are the Swans going to get their first home win of the season?
Yeah, I think so. I think
with a lot of conviction there, Matt.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the table. I'm just staring at the table, and I'm just thinking, right? Do you know what? We scored 3 goals against Luton. I know Luton defensively have often, since they've been in the Championship, have left a bit to be desired. But in terms of the confidence that it'll give us that we can score, and I know he talked about a lowly goal total. We can go at Huddersfield. We know we got the players there that can hurt them, and the confidence. 3 goals outside the box. That to me tells us that we're now going to hopefully show a little bit more eagerness to hit the ball when the opportunity arises. So let's say let glass half full again. Let's say we're going to win this one. We're going to win it 2-1.
Oof, 2-1 says Matt. Steve, what about you?
I'm going to sit on the fence and say 1-1. I'm not sure that win's going to come on the weekend, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was thinking 1-1 too, but hopefully the second half performance against Luton will really give us confidence, and we'll see, us take the game to a Huddersfield team who've had a good start to the season, and won't be short of confidence when they come down here. So I'm hoping that we'll be that we'll give them a really good game. And I think if we can attack the way we did in the second half against Luton, there's every chance that we're going to get goals. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. It's been a slightly longer podcast than usual this week, but in fairness, we had a heck of a lot to discuss just with that Luton match. Hope you enjoyed reliving that amazing experience with us. Hope it didn't give you a repeat of the palpitations that we all felt on Saturday. But that's really summed up the joy of football, isn't it? Why we all love this sport and why we all follow Swansea City too. So until next time, thank you very much for listening.